In the ogre kingdoms, the bigger and fatter you are, the more respect you could command. In truth, the ogres believe the larger the stomach, the more favor they would receive from the gods. Of all the ogre tyrants, none can be considered fatter than over-tyrant Greasus Goldtooth, or as he is formerly known, Trade Lord Greasus Tribestealer, Drake Crush, Gatecrasher, Horde Master Goldtooth, the shockingly obese. Greasus was born into the Goldtooth tribe, where his father, Goth, ruled as its tyrant. Greasus, like the rest of his bloodline, were born abnormally large and very strong. Many were content serving under Goth. He was strong and fat, the pinnacle of everything an ogre aspired to be. But Greasus was not so content. He wished to rule not only his tribe, but all the tribes, and with that, he knew actions spoke louder than words. Not only would he kill his own father, but he ate him too. This was a show of dominance to prove to his tribe that he was far stronger than his father, and that if any would disobey him, he would eat them too. With the Goldtooth tribe firmly under his fat fingers, Greasus now looked to make the others submit to his rule. He quickly sent out messengers to the other ogre tribes, demanding them to pay tribute to him, the one and true over-tyrant. But as can be expected, many of them scoffed at the claim of some random tyrant calling themselves over-tyrant. There had not been an over-tyrant for over 100 years, and truly there has not been a great enough tyrant since then to rise and claim the title. Greasus knew that he and he alone could claim the title of over-tyrant. For during his days ruling over the Goldtooth tribe, Greasus had grown to a gigantic size, growing fatter than any ogre living or dead, at least in his mind, as he was still growing and there were still far larger ogres. Nonetheless, he had grown so much that he had trouble walking and preferred to be carried by a horde of noblars. Greasus himself was a very strange ogre, for he had a strange addiction with shiny trinkets, and often he decorated himself with such things. When the time was right, Greasus rallied his forces and set off to subjugate or destroy all of the lesser tribes. The first tribe to feel the wrath of Goldtooth had been feasting below a mountain. They were unsuspecting of the fact that Greasus had climbed far above and began to shower the valley below with massive boulders that he himself tossed, engulfing their camp and killing them all. Next was a tribe led by an older and far larger tyrant known as Badmouth. Greasus was confident and would not be denied his right to the title of over-tyrant. He would challenge Badmouth to a duel, the older ogre accepting without hesitation and jumping into the nearby moor pit, eagerly awaiting his soon-to-be prey. Greasus on the other hand did not wish to waste any time fighting some lesser ogre, and literally threw his own weight against his foe. He jumped into the moor pit, specifically onto Badmouth, whose strength could not hold the great obese one. His neck was snapped, killing him instantly. This event sparks much debate even to this day. Did Greasus truly win, or did he cheat? With many of Badmouth's ogres encircling the pit, preparing to attack Greasus while he devoured his former foe. When he was done feasting, Greasus issued a challenge for any who wished to rule that they may attempt to do so and take him down. 3 would take up the challenge, with all 3 being beaten and eaten. Soon enough, the rest of Badmouth's former tribe would bow before Greasus. Word would travel across the various tribes of the self-professed over-tyrant and his doings. Many tribes would come to meet Greasus. Some would bow while others would challenge him. The latter would be outright destroyed and usually devoured by the Great Obese One. The ogre tribes were in a state of all-out war until the battle at Firemouth. It is said that the great volcano Firemouth, one of the living gods of the ogres, awoke from his slumber, which solidified the claim of Greasus Goldtooth to the title of over-tyrant, as he did battle with many tribes. If their god had spoken, surely they had to obey. Most of the tribes were now united, and Goldtooth sought to increase his power, where he wished to be the most dominant force throughout the land. The uniting of the ogre tribes could not have come at a better time. for a new threat was arriving, and it would prove to be quite troublesome. For quite close to the ogres, the Darwizar, better known as the Chaos Dwarves, had been experimenting on the local greenskins of the region, creating the ferocious Black Orcs while enslaving many greenskin tribes. Unfortunately for the Darwizar, you can never expect greenskins to stay obedient for too long, with the greenskins waiting for the time to strike and break away from their slavers. The now free greenskins flooded the Mountains of Morn, and it wasn't long until great battles would be fought throughout the land between greenskin and ogre. One Black Orc in particular, Urk Ironskull, had risen through the ranks of his kin and had assembled a mighty horde. Many ogre tribes would find themselves being displaced or destroyed, with many greenskins from near and far travelling to meet this rising war boss who promised nothing but endless fighting. Greasus at the time was not aware of the rising threat, as he had been travelling to unite the last of the ogre tribes. He was now over-tyrant, but there were still some who believed that he had not yet earned the title. Greasus would perform many feats of strength in order to prove himself. He would slay the great ice drake Jorgrel, which earned him the title of Drake Crush, and shatter ancient Darwi gates, which earned him the title of Gatecrasher. He would not just prove his physical strength, but also the strength of his stomach as he devoured entire herds of animals. But still, there were clans who did not bow down to him. Eventually, he got word of the Green Menace, which was destroying his newly acquired kingdom. Greasus would smile, for a challenge finally presented itself. What better than the rabble that was destroying his land, which were killing his subjects? Surely, if he killed the orcs which had presented to be such a problem, there would be no question to his rule. Greasus would travel to many ogre encampments, gathering support and raising an army the ogre kingdoms have not seen for many years. Greasus and his army marched towards the path of destruction that Ironskull had created. He and his army had traveled far. The very ground shook as the army of massive warriors hurried down to break the invaders before they could do more damage. They passed many destroyed camps and so many dead ogres. This only served to enrage Greasus. So many lives dead. Urk at this point was aware of the massive army being hot on his trail, but he was not worried. His war had swelled to incredible numbers and was now very confident the ogres would not be a problem. He destroyed many tribes before. They were simply coming together and made it easier for him to finish them once and for all. But Urk would not turn his armies around. He would humiliate the ogres and prove he was the biggest and strongest of the land. His armies charged towards Firemouth, the living god of the ogres, the great volcano, which would be taken by the greenskins, and there he would wait until the ogres came. Shortly after, Greasus and his armies arrived at the foot of Firemouth, the living god and one of the greatest strongholds of the ogres. They were shocked to see that this stronghold was now under control of a lesser race. As can be imagined, rage flew through the heart of the ogres. A sacred place was being tainted by the hands of greenskin filth, and now they must pay. The furious ogres charged up the slopes of the mountains, something that Urk had expected they would do. But he did not expect the might of a combined race. These were no mere tribes fighting like unorganized warriors. These were now a united race, under the command of an over-tyrant. Many ogres charged up, but before they could run towards their death, they were halted by the thundering commands of Greasus Goldtooth. He demanded they stop and wait for only his orders, while signaling to the lesser tyrants that they must meet. On this very rare occurrence, the leaders of many ogre tribes had united to form a war council. Many tyrants gathered at the request of Greasus Goldtooth, each of them trying to explain what in their mind was the best means of attack to destroy the orcs. But none could speak over the over-tyrant, the largest and smartest of them all. He explained his plan, and while many of the tyrants did not understand, they knew better than to disobey the most obese one. The ogres would not charge to the top of Fire Mountain. Instead, they would move up the slopes slowly, and an orc like Urk would surely find frustration in this, and would eventually find himself forced to charge down with his forces. As they would do so, the great beasts under the control of the ogres would smash through the enemy lines, while the foot soldiers would follow closely behind. With this, the greenskin lines would be cut in two, and they would be at a disadvantage. So spoke Greasus. The great volcano itself rumbled as it approved of the battle plan, and with that, a great host marched up the slopes of the mountain. Urk and his forces braced themselves as he commanded goblins to throw themselves at his enemies. Despite their incredible numbers, goblins are extremely insignificant to the might of ogres and their great warbeasts. Wave after wave of goblins would be shattered as the ogres pressed on towards a line of terrifying black orcs. At first, the black orcs proved little more than a nuisance, slowing down the massive warriors. But eventually, the tide would be turned as Urk's grand plan was revealed. He was using his forces to wear out the ogres and eventually break them. From the sides came many orcs surrounding the main force of ogres as their warbeasts were being held in place by the Black Orc Guard. The ogres were easily outnumbered, but Greasus commanded them to stand strong and hold their ground. They were far more scared of the Overtyrant than a horde of green filth. The greenskins threw themselves at the ogres, surrounded at all sides as the Firemouth roared on for them. Greasus himself was in the midst of fighting, keeping his armies in line as hundreds, if not thousands of greenskins would be crushed under the weight of sheer brutality. Urk had been watching the battlefield. The ogres should have broken by now. Why were they still fighting? Greasus, the Overtyrant, kept their hearts pounding, and they would not break until he was dead. Something he would do personally. Urk would gather his remaining Black Orcs, who at this point had dealt with the great beasts of the Ogre Kingdoms, and led a mighty charge towards the Overtyrant. Both forces would once again clash on endlessly, as each of them tried to wear the other out. The Black Orcs threw themselves at Greasus, but they were no match for him, as he simply swatted them away like flies. Soon enough, Greasus and Urk would finally meet face to face. Greasus would finally spot Urk. This battle was close to being over. The warboss was but a halfling compared to the size of the Overtyrant, who had dropped his weapon and picked up the warboss with his bare hands. Despite the warboss's best efforts to break free, he was not strong enough, as Greasus, who had grown rather bored with the fighting, crushed the warboss with his bare hands. As the warboss died, the many orcs broke and fled. The day was won, and now nobody could question the will of the Overtyrant. A grand celebration was held as the many ogres feasted upon the many dead orcs. And from henceforth, all the tribes will bow down to the will of Greasus Goldtooth. And with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our lore video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.